You are listening to Awake in Relationship, a podcast about intimacy, community, and culture in a time of great change, with Silas Rose.
Well, hello, dear listener. My name is Silas Rose, and this is Awake in Relationship. If you're into personal development, and I imagine you probably are if you're listening to this podcast, you might know that there are few challenges greater to personal growth and self-awareness than starting a business. I think this is doubly true for anyone that might consider themselves a social entrepreneur or conscious creator. I define that person really quite broadly as anyone who is intrinsically motivated to do good in the world through their business. I've been in this camp really for most of my adult life, as I ran an acupuncture practice for many years. And one thing I noticed, especially with health entrepreneurs, is that they're 100% invested in serving their clients. They're really heart-based people. But when it comes to marketing or selling their service, many stumble and struggle with this tension between selling and serving. For heart-based entrepreneurs, this really sets a limit, both on the impact and income one receives. So I want to bring in someone that really knows this territory well, and has really worked with thousands of entrepreneurs to hone their message and create alignment with the people they most want to serve. In this episode of Awake in Relationship, I speak with Tad Hargrave, business mentor and coach at marketingforhippies.com, which is a unique membership community serving social entrepreneurs and green businesses around the world. In this conversation, Tad and I really go deep into the foundations of what it takes to create a conscious business in the digital age. One of the things I really love about this conversation is really Tad's folksy wisdom, which reduces the complexity and overwhelm of marketing to 3 simple principles, what actually can be applied in almost any relationship, especially when it comes to dating. So if you're starting or growing a business, or perhaps looking for a mate, this episode's for you. Well, Tad, good morning and welcome to Awake in Relationship.
Thanks so much. Good to be here.
Yeah. I think I first attended one of your workshops, Marketing for Hippies, probably almost 20 years ago. I'm not too sure when you started, but I was just sort of coming out of acupuncture school and eager to build a business, and you came onto my radar, and you're still going. That's amazing.
Sure. Yeah, it amazes me too.
Yeah. What was the original inspiration to get into this work and to teaching about marketing, especially for people that historically kind of resist that concept?
Well, an incredible inability to hold down a job is always a good motivation in these things. I mean, I just struggled with being employed by others, too strongly opinionated, rankled at having a boss. So I just knew I needed some independence. And then I tried leading kind of summer camps, gatherings, where there was a lot of facilitation and holding space, but I realized I really like to talk a lot. And that was a problem when you're trying to hold space, but you're always the one filling it. And then I had this background a little bit in marketing, and I had so many friends who didn't, but needed it for their businesses. They were trying to be a holistic practitioner or thinking about the whole green business thing. They didn't want to work for the man either. They had the same affliction, but they were really stymied on how to tell people about what they did, especially when we all came from this hippie background of, well, marketing is the devil and capitalism is the devil. But suddenly, because you don't want to work for the man, that becomes one of the only options. And then how to grapple with that. So I had some thoughts and some expertise, and it just began, and a lot of it developed as I went.
Has there been kind of an evolution of thought or your audience, people you're speaking to over the years?
Certainly there's been evolution around my thoughts. One of the big transitions was I came across the work of this fellow, Ari Galper, and I can't remember what year it was, but he really shifted things for me, that the focus of marketing is not about trying to get this sale, but trying to get to the truth of, is this a fit or not? He's got a great website, unlockthegame.com. And that was one of the major evolutions. And then, a lot of it came in from working with my people. And I thought when I started, I was going to be working with green, local, independent retail. That was who I approached first. My first workshops were a lot of those people. And then one day I looked up and realized that half of them were holistic practitioners or life coaches. And so then for a while I shifted. I had a workshop, Marketing 101 for holistic practitioners. And that's what I did. And that, of course, made everything easier, and then broadened it back out again. But yeah, that's been the general trajectory of it.
And you've kind of mostly transitioned to kind of an online community, is that correct?
Yeah, and the lockdowns had a lot to do with that. I was already doing more and more online, but then when I couldn't do live workshops, I mean, like a lot of us, we just had to figure out some way to adapt. And so then I created a membership, which I'd thought about for years, but suddenly I had all this time on my hands. I said, okay, this is the time to do it.
So the name Marketing for Hippies it's just such a great name from a marketing perspective,
right?
Because you really nail your niche, and you nail what you're doing basically. And I definitely, I'm a West Coast guy. I definitely own my hippie. Yeah. I have lots of hippie qualities, but I think a lot of people may still have kind of negative stereotypes about what a hippie is. How do you define a hippie?
Very broadly. Of course, there's the real hippies from the 60s, 70s. And so I suppose I'm defining it as people who are generally skeptical of the machine, who are generally don't trust the system, and who are trying to do something good for the world, that's conscious, that's ethical, and that's green, sustainable, gentle on the earth. People who care about those things. And people who really have an issue with marketing. They have a hard time with it, receiving it and delivering it. They're just apoplectic. They can't. A lot of them can't even bring themselves to do it.
I kind of want to go into that, actually, because I guess I would define the modern business hippie as somewhat of a social entrepreneur. And with that, I think comes a lot of high idealism and vision, but often kind of weak in the kind of action part or the application, where when it comes to especially marketing or creating a sales funnel. So it'd be really interesting to kind of dive into, like, what is the resistance?
Well, to me, fundamentally, at the acute level, what it comes down to is either they have no idea how to market at all. They've just never thought about it. So it's just an unknown. It's overwhelming. Where do I even start? There's that. Or they've gotten advice, but it's sketchy, pushy, manipulative, and they think that's what marketing has to be. And so they either have no idea what to do, or they have a very clear idea of what to do, but it'll mean they can't sleep at night. And then there's that tear of, do I sell my soul and do the thing that works, or I just don't sell my soul, keep my integrity, but I'm broke. And that's a hellish choice to make. I mean, easy when it's sort of theoretically, of course, we all choose integrity. But when rent is due and you don't have any food to eat and you got kids, and it's very difficult and very seductive when people are standing up there saying, well, you just have to do these simple tactics and you can get people to buy right away. So when people are desperate, of course, they'll fall for this. And then I think, so that's at the acute level. They either just don't know, or what they know ain't so. They know they got bad advice. But at the deeper level, they really do have a political economic analysis of what's happening in the world. And they have questions about the whole money thing and banks and the Federal Reserve and interest charged on money. So then it's, how do you suddenly become, a business when you see that capitalism is destroying so much of the world? Or, a certain form of capitalism, we could say. And it's just confounding. Even without bad marketing advice or thinking about just the thought of going into business is suddenly, oh, now I'm the man. Now I'm a part of the machine. And for me, that was a distinction I really had to make, because I went to all the anti-globalization protests, hung out with my anarchist friends, and it really dawned on me that the Monsanto and Cargill and all these big tech, big pharma, multinational corporations, that's a completely different thing than that mom and pop shop on the Wall Street and Main Street are not the same streets at all. Completely different. And supporting local independent business is good. This is, yes, still capitalism, but it's not this kind of cartel capitalism that seems to be destroying so much. And so, but I think a lot of them haven't really wrestled that out themselves. It's just, well, business bad, capitalism bad, money bad. And then when you add on top of all that, most of us have had experiences with money where money has been used to hurt us, or we've used money to hurt other people. And then we've all had experiences of marketing and being marketed to in ways that didn't feel good. So you put that all together in the mix, and it's often, almost always, it's unarticulated. It's not articulated. They couldn't put words to it. They just have a vague feeling of dis-ease and gross and yuck around marketing. It just feels bad, and they want nothing to do with it. But then they become an entrepreneur. Now they have to, and they have to unpack this, and they really don't even know where to start. They just know it feels awful, but they need to do it, and they need help sorting out how to do that.
I really think that becoming an entrepreneur is probably one of the hardest and most rewarding kind of personal development paths one can be on, because you confront so much in kind of internal patterns or belief systems that might not have surfaced if you hadn't kind of put yourself in that position, especially when it comes to, paying rent, as you say.
Yeah.
Like giving up the security of a job and going out on your own. So it really seems the rub is really around money. Do you work with people and their money mindset when you're coaching?
I don't. It's not my thing. I have opinions about money and pricing, and I'm always happy to share those with people. But no, I don't tend to work on the money mindset, because I find so much of it can be handled just by shifting our orientation around marketing. If we look at marketing as fundamentally we're trying to get people to say yes and to buy, everything gets so weird right away and manipulative. But if I'm walking into a conversation not already convinced that they need it, but open for a conversation, and my intention is genuinely just to get to the truth of if it's a fit, that seems to handle most of it. Every once in a while, people really do have some deep money wounds that are very particular, and that may need to be looked at. But in my experience, if we keep our attention on the truth of if it's a fit, most of the rest of it goes away.
I guess I still want to kind of drill down a little bit around this, because I feel it's so integral. I guess the question is more around attributing value to what you do. That seems to be a real sticking point.
Yeah. Well, and what makes it stickier, of course, is the rhetoric that's often used is charge what you're worth, which immediately causes trouble because it conflates our personal worth as a human being to what we charge. And this gets people tied up in knots all the time. It's because it's an impossible formulation. There's no way to come to that. And then, if we say, okay, well, what is what I do worth? Again, it's so hard to come to that. And so instead, I would offer two things to people when they're looking at their pricing. The first is just to look at the facts of their life. That includes everything from debt they have, financial goals they have, their ongoing expenses. And of course, for most of us, we have no idea about any of those numbers. You ask people, well, how much do you make per year? They don't even know, how much, what are your expenses? We just don't know. So if you're in that point of trying to figure out your pricing, it's just a good time to sit down and have a visit with those realities. But with some of the facts too are also, what do other people charge in the industry? What's the maximum that's charged out there? What's the least amount that's charged? Which at least can give you probably some window to play within, that your price is probably going to be in there unless you want to do a lot of explaining as to why it's a lot lower or a lot higher, which is, possible. But we have to start with the facts. And I think most people don't really think that through. And so it becomes this internal wrestling, like, what is the value of what I do? And but what it could transform people's lives in all these ways. So it's really just invaluable, but, I can't. So first we just start with the realities of the world. And then I think the second thing is we just go with our feelings. And Mark Silver, heartofbusiness.com, he talks about this idea of a kind of intuitive pricing. He calls it resonant pricing, but where you might start with, say, okay, charging $10 an hour. How does that feel? Oh, too low. $1,000 an hour. How does that feel? Too high. And then you just start going back and forth like a pendulum. And you take, a particular offering, and you will, if you really looked at the facts, you will find yourself settling on a price, and it might be lower or higher than you would have thought. But you'll know it's the right one because your whole body just relaxes. And then that's what you charge. And it might seem, but wait, this is way lower than I thought. Okay, but if you're all tied up in knots about charging a higher price, that's not going to work well. So start with the amount that you relaxed on, and that may increase quickly as you get comfortable with it, but it's better to just go with what feels right in your body. And it might be more. It's like, wow, I just totally relaxed at that higher number. Right. Okay. So then you just have to figure out how to market yourself and market it so that the value is clear. Mac Ross is a marketing guy. He said, the purpose of marketing is about establishing the value beyond the immediately apparent. So it's not immediately apparent what the value is. That's so much of marketing. And so if you make products, it's really helping people understand everything that went into the making of the product. Because of course, most of us have no idea, especially if it's handmade. We just have zero idea the amount of time and labor that goes into it. And then there's if it's a service, but yeah, there's also, what kind of time and training and expertise and how many hours have you worked? All of this goes into it. And yeah, it's not a bad idea to also articulate what are the benefits of it. Well, yeah, if you do this and this problem goes away or you get this result, here's some of the consequences that can happen. That's fine to articulate too. But that's my general sense of it.
It sounds like it's really about kind of attunement.
Yeah. Attunement is a big deal. It's, if I could I think the major problem in the world, if I had to sum it up, is illiteracy. Not in terms of books, but we can't read almost anything. People can't read a room, can't read faces, can't read a situation. And so it's the old permaculture answer to every question is, well, it depends. And so that's true in the marketing and sales. What should I do? Well, it depends. It really depends on the situation. Yes, there are some general principles, but then you have to translate it into the situation and the time and the place that you're in. And so there's no formula. I mean, there's plenty of formulas, but if you try to apply a formula onto a situation it doesn't belong in, it ends up being very, very bad. So yeah, there's an attunement to the world and to ourselves, to our own bodies. So many things go wrong. Yeah, when people are not properly attuned, they're just not paying attention. And then it's the right solution at the wrong time. And that causes a problem. And then on the relationship thing, I know we spoke about this a bit in the workshop. I mean, the word relationship can be defined in a lot of ways. The distinction I'd make is that it's often given as advice in the marketing world, just focus on building relationships with people first. But that's often with this hidden agenda that I'm going to build a relationship so that eventually you will buy. That's why, schmoozing, in other words. And then people come to us for help and we try to just get all buddy with them. But what they really just want is a good old diagnosis, prognosis, prescription from us. And the buddy stuff can maybe happen later. Once that relationship has been established, then we can get into really getting to know about each other's kids. But I find sometimes people try to use that as a tool too early, as a way of almost like guilting people into working with them. And it's not just questionable ethically, but it can burn you out because now you're trying to sustain all these relationships with all these people who may not be a fit at all. They may never want to work with you. And so I would rather an entrepreneur get very clear about who they want to work, who the communities they want to serve are, and have a lot of conversations that are just candid with people to see if it's a fit and spend their effort developing and deepening relationships with those people. Now, of course, on social media, you can also be sharing about your life so that people learn about you so that they might feel comfortable. But to me, that doesn't feel like a relationship, and the evidence of that for me is as I get better known, people will come up to me and they know me, but I don't know anything about them. They've been following me for years, but I've never met. So that's not a relationship. It might become one, but that's not what it is.
I sort of feel that the screens, and the more time we spend online, really just kind of messes up that attunement or our ability to communicate and read the subtle language.
Oh, totally.
So you mentioned that, I recently attended a workshop or hosted a workshop actually with you in Victoria. You offered some really helpful, simple advice, essentially kind of 3 principles that you use in all marketing. I wonder if you'd be willing to kind of give a brief summary.
I got this from a book called Monopolize Your Marketplace by Rich Harshaw. And this isn't his wording, but I think the spirit of it is the same. Is the first thing we have to do is get people's attention. The second thing we have to do is filter to see if it's a fit. And third, we got to lower the risk of them taking the first step. And the thing that really struck me that he'd said in the book is just everything you ever do in marketing has to achieve all 3. I mean, whether it's a poster, it's a conversation, it's a presentation, it's an ad, all of it has to do all 3 of these. So it's very useful as a kind of broad checklist. Now, getting attention, of course, what else is there if they don't know we're there? They don't see the ad. Everything else is nothing's going to happen. So first we have to get their attention. Yeah. Second, we have to filter, meaning, so what? This is now they notice us. That's all that happens with getting attention. They see us. They're aware of us. But now they've got to see is this something that's relevant to them that they want to learn more about and delve into deeper? And then the safety piece, this risk. Okay, well, they notice us. Maybe it's relevant. It is a fit, but it doesn't mean it's not scary to want to spend that kind of money or to invest that kind of time or to even go into some of these issues. There's big risk for people. And so we We need to do all three of these. Now, with the getting attention, fundamentally, that comes down to word of mouth marketing. This comes down to that's because that's how most of attention is gained. People tend to think, oh, get their attention, so I have to do something big and flashy, loud. But almost all attention for practical purposes is done through, I heard it from a friend. With the filtering, there's really three levels of that: relevance, credibility, and value. Meaning this is how they're looking at us. The first thing on their mind is this relevant to me? Can this help me solve a problem I have, get a result I want? Is this the kind of product I want? And that happens in about 3 seconds. I mean, they look at us and suss out their relevance right away. And if it's relevant, that doesn't mean they buy. Now it's like, do I trust you? Are you credible? Is this product going to last? Is it of good quality? Why should I trust? I mean, you say you can help me solve this problem. That is relevant to me. I am struggling with this problem, but yeah, why should I trust you? And so there's ways we have to build that kind of credibility, which I think when sometimes people are focused on want to build a relationship, I want to say you should probably focus on credibility first before they even open up to you. Just be trustworthy. And there's lots of ways to build credibility. Everything from case studies to testimonials to doing presentations to statistics. There's lots of ways we can do it. And then then there's the value. And it's just, is the price does it seem like, yeah, that's a good return on investment. If I spend this much money, I'll get even more value in return. That's a really big deal. And a lot of people don't think through the pricing. So, they'll, even if it's relevant and they trust you, but then they look at the price, $10,000 for an hour of your time. Well, that's insane. Oh, but I went to a personal growth thing and they said to charge what I'm worth. And it's so, and then with the lowering the risk, there's, fundamentally 3 things you can do to lower the risk. One is reputation is the main thing, which ties us back to the beginning of word of mouth. But that's the biggest thing that reduces risk. Even if something is very risky, but 10 people who've done it and loved it, that handles the risk more than anything. Then second, there's education. You can be teaching people, well, here's how we do what we do. What I call point of view marketing. That dramatically reduces the risk too. And then the thing everybody thinks about is, well, I can offer guarantees, which are great. I mean, they do work. But that's not really the fundamental thing that reduces the risk. And why not throw them in? Because it can make a dramatic difference in the response you get to your offers. If there's an offer that has good value at the pricing level, and you've made a good case for that, and then there's some additional guarantee on it, yeah, you can double the response you get on some of those offers. But so it's always those 3 in that order. If it's an ad, like a poster, well, the headline is going to, first of all, hopefully it's in a place that people actually notice posters and you get their attention. Then the headline is going to establish, is this relevant to me or not? So an example was, there was a moving company in, I think, Dallas, Texas, and it was the first all women's moving company in Texas. And the headline was, last year there were 1,762 lawsuits against moving companies in Dallas, Texas. Subheadline, ask these 15 questions to prevent an unpleasant moving experience. Well, that's a nice hook. You kind of, oh, I'm thinking about moving, and yeah. And then they said, and then there were the 15 questions. So this is a kind of educational piece, building credibility, and you read it and you think, oh, those are good questions. One of them was about insurance, and are they fully insured or self-insured? Because with, I think, fully insured, if they drop your TV, they full replacement value. If it's self-insured, they replace by the pound. So you get $20 or something, for the TV. So, and then, but then the lowering the risk was, call us now for our free moving company comparison checklist. And that was the lowering the risk of taking the next step. So there's all sorts of ways this can happen, but those 3 have to be achieved. So it's not a bad idea for people to look at their marketing. And if it's not working, if you're not getting the kind of clients and the number of clients you want, where's the malfunction? It's one of those 3.
Back to attention. I think there's a common myth that we have to actually really spend a lot of time on social media, competing for attention. And for a hippie like me, it's just such a bad proposition.
Totally.
What's your belief around social media at this point?
I use it, but you don't need it. I mean, my take generally on marketing is you don't need anything. You just need something. You don't need anything in particular. In other words, you don't need to blog or be on Substack or be on YouTube or go to networking events. You don't need to do workshops. You don't need to have an intro talk. You don't need to write a book. You don't need to have an app. I mean, all the things we're told, you don't need anything, but you do need to do something. And what is that something? Well, whatever it is has to achieve those three things. So then in terms of getting their attention, it's just good to go back to the fundamental thing we're aiming at. Instead of saying, well, I need to be on social media. No, you just need to get people's attention. And you can absolutely get people's attention without any social media at all, ever. So completely not required. I like it because it's easy. It makes things easy to share. It helps me build my email list. So strategically, I'm for it personally. But if it's also the slowest approach. I mean, if somebody said I need clients tomorrow, or in 30 days I need to get some clients, social media would be the last thing. I'd say no. Instead of this, within the attention level, there's also these three things. There's a kind of a cold level, a warm level, and a hot level in marketing. And the cold level is you're just approaching strangers, which is what most people think of marketing. Oh, I'm going up to strangers and trying to talk them into buying what I sell. And that's hard. That's just, it's like dating. Going up to somebody you don't know and introducing yourself is rough. And, it's like going up to bat. And even the baseball greats swing, like they strike out 80% of the time. So that's what it's like. This cold approach is mostly you strike out. Then there's the warm approach. And the warm approach is you say, okay, instead of going up to people individually, one by one as a stranger, I'm going to find who already knows them. I'm going to find what I call hubs, and I'll have those hubs do the introduction. So that takes more time up front, but it's much faster in the long term. You instead of trying to get their attention, say, shine the spotlight over here on me, you just look at where the spotlight's already shining and you go stand there. It's much easier. So you say, okay, I'm trying to sell these beer steins, and these wooden beer steins I make, and where do I go? Well, I just set up a stand on the street and I sell a few, but it's really rough and most people walk by. Or you can go to a beer festival and sell them there. Much more likely, it's the Girl Guide example I gave in the workshop, trying to sell Girl Guide cookies, and you go door to door knocking, and it takes weeks, to get all your cookies sold. Or you can just put it in front of a place that sells weed, and all the people who are, got the munchies are coming out. Easy. So, the old question, if you're going to make a hamburger stand and you could only have one competitive advantage, what do you want it to be? Well, you want it to be right by a hungry crowd. That's the thing. So that's how you get people's attention. Where is their attention already? Where's the hungry crowd? Just go there. Who's already connected to them? Who do they already trust? Do that. And then that takes us to the third level, which is the hot level, which is the word of mouth level, where now it's just you're getting most of your business by referral and word of mouth, which is a very real place that businesses can get. It takes time. But if you have a real niche and you're really good at what you do and you build these relationships with the hubs, and over time, this can become, it just takes less effort, not no effort, but dramatically less than it used to. In the beginning, it's just such a grind. In the beginning, there's a certain inevitable amount of cold marketing that you end up doing because nobody knows your name. Nobody's glad you came. You just have to get out there. That's how it is. But the goal is just not to stay there. You build the relationships with the hubs. Eventually, you become a hub. And none of that requires social media. If you were a life coach and you're wanting to get clients, first of all, I'd figure out what kind of clients. I'd pick some sort of a niche to start with. And then, okay, where do those people hang out? who's connected to them? How can I build that relationship? Could maybe I get one of those people to host me, to bring me in? You think of it in that way, and then that's much, much faster. Because you can post on social media for years and not get much of a following, and get no clients at all. So, yeah, it's not the social media, it's the function that it's playing.
I'd really like to figure out a way to utilize ChatGPT or some other AI tool to sort of set the algorithms on each other. Right. Have you thought about how AI is going to change the marketing field?
Not in depth, other than from a societal level, I'm horrified by what this is going to do. This kind of plagiarism software that just rips off other people's stuff. As we're seeing with the art. Who needs to hire your friend as an artist to do your portrait? This AI thing can just whip up a million different versions of portraits and make you look super fantastic all the time. So societally, I'm concerned, but from a marketing standpoint, I'm not in particular. And I may be naive to it, but what it seems to me is AI is just an algorithm. That's it. It's not creative. It can't give you a point of view. So to the extent that people are going to rely so heavily on that, I say, I wish you luck. But I think somebody who does the deep work of really depth around their ethics and how they treat people, depth around their niche and really figuring out what their role is, depth around their point of view and articulating how they see things and educating people, depth around their business model and really constructing a smart structure, architecture, and then depth around relationships with the hubs. That if I had to bet money on somebody who's just going to go all in with a generic business with AI versus the depth, I'll put money on depth all the time. And so I think what we're about to see is a lot more noise in the world and less signal, because it's going to be easier to pump out content, this AI generated stuff. But it's shit. It's just so generic. It's so derivative of everybody else. And so it's like, great. Go ahead, write your book with ChatGPT. I mean, knock yourself out and we'll be over here digging deep. And the AI might win in the short term, but I don't think it's going to really be the thing in the long term. So there'll be more noise, and anyone with a clear signal is going to stand out even more. So it's great for me. Yeah.
Depth and building relationships.
Yeah.
Winning formula. Tad, thank you so much. This has been a great conversation. How can people connect with you?
Just go to marketingforhippies.com and it's all there.
Awesome. Thanks again.
Thank you so much, Silas.
If you want to learn more about Tad's work and perhaps join his community, head over to marketingforhippies.com. I'll place a link in the show notes at awakenrelationship.com. If you enjoyed this episode and maybe have a friend who's in business right now and struggling with their marketing, please consider forwarding this episode on to them. I welcome your feedback and suggestions for future guests. I can be reached through the contact page of the website or on Instagram, Substack, and LinkedIn. If you made it this far into the episode, I really want to thank you, dear listener, for tuning in. Till next time, stay connected.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Awake in Relationship. If you liked what you heard, please click subscribe to get the latest show delivered fresh to your device, or sign up for our newsletter at awakeinrelationship.com. Sharing is caring.